Look at a country and have a look at their national debt now. Every country is in debt. And how do they make money? Go to war. My name is Dr. Linda Kramer. 2001 is when my real story started. I was living in North Carolina at that time in the USA because I'm an Australian. And about 2 o'clock, I woke up struggling to breathe. And I have a map here to show people where I was. And here's the map of my house. And here is the front door into the house. There was a living room. And you go down into here is the bedroom. And you go around a walk-in closet into a bathroom. So it took me about 5 minutes or 10 minutes to get from the bedroom just to this toilet because I was struggling to breathe. That is actually where I died. I was sitting on the toilet, struggling to breathe, and I just simply went to sleep. Instantly, I found myself floating near the ceiling in the living room. So I found myself over here, and my body was all this way away in the bathroom area. I saw my husband at the time. He ran through the living room past me, and he opened the door, and 2 paramedics came in. When they finally wheeled me out through the living room past me, I saw myself on the gurney. So after they all left the house, that's when it got really interesting. I call it the fog stage. I went into this like a mist when you close your eyes. And when I opened my eyes a few seconds later, I found myself in a field of flowers. And I'm on this, it's a very gentle sloping field full of flowers. And as I'm looking around, over in the distance, I could see mountain ranges. Over on my left, I could see a city. And behind me, because it's so panoramic, where I could see 360 degrees without turning my head, I found myself looking at rivers, other cities, and enormous mountains, far, far greater than what we have here on Earth. So as I'm looking around in this field of flowers, I noticed that the flowers could understand me. The flowers below me, as I tried to walk, because I'm still used to using feet at this point, I found out telekinetically through telepathy that these flowers were one with my own consciousness. What they thought I could feel, and what I thought they could feel as well. So as I tried to walk, they understood that I was still trying to use my feet, because in this place we did not need to use our feet because we're energetic beings. So the flowers moved. They physically swayed so my feet wouldn't crush them. So one of the photos I drew is like what the flowers look like. They had normal like petals, but they had energy coming out of the end of their petals. They were living, breathing, conscious awareness, like everything else in this place. The rocks that formed the mountains, every single stone, pebble, rock had its own consciousness. They were alive. As I looked at trees, the trees spoke to me. As I looked at other people in this place, they knew what I was thinking. And I call that our intentions. Whatever we think, everybody else knows, because in this place, everything is one. So I believe that I was in this area for about 18 to 20 odd months. I was following people around. I was walking through the city. I could think of being on top of the mountains, and instantly I was on top of the mountains. I did not have to climb them physically unless I wanted to. If I wanted to be down near the rivers, I was instantly down at the rivers. If I wanted to be walking through the cobbled stones like little villages, I was instantly there. And I was following this lady who I talk about in my book, 5 Years in Heaven. I was walking behind her, but I knew she could see me out of that peripheral because it's all panoramic where we are. And as I thought about her, I became her and she became me. I could see all the lives that she had ever had. I could see every thought, every process she had ever had. So I followed her for a very long time, where we had intermingled, or what I call in science bilocation, where two objects are simultaneously in the same location at once. I became her. I became a duck while I was watching a flock of ducks. So this process went for about 18 to 20 months. Then I get a tap on my shoulder and I hear, now it's time for you to go. Now, I don't have any idea who that person was that was like directing me on this tour. But then I find myself standing outside of this church where we're talking planks of wood that are 200 feet long and 20 foot wide. We're talking sandstone pebbles that are the size of a skyscraper. The ceiling was so far above me that I could not even see the ceiling of this church because it was such an enormity of space. So I'm walking down past these pews, like in a church, where 30 people could sit on these pews because they're so long and it's one piece of timber that creates these chairs. And as I get to the top where like the altar would be, there was 3 beings standing there. So I've got another picture of what I saw. These beings did not talk, for they had no eyes, nose, mouth, or ears. They spoke telepathically to me. And as I'm standing there, still wearing my pajamas, because remember, I died at 2 a.m., these beings, they were moving energy. The energy came up from the ground to where their head would be, and it was like a reverse waterfall where the water is going upwards instead of downwards. And then the energy rotated both counterclockwise and clockwise at the same time. And I'm standing there looking at these beings. I wasn't scared. There was no thought at all. It was normal for me to be there. I knew this place from previous times I'd been there, so in other lives that I've had. Then I heard telepathically to look inside the box. So there was a box in front of me, and as I took the lid off this box, inside the box it was eternal. There was no walls or floor in this box. And inside it was hundreds and hundreds of millions or billions of little bubbles. And in every single bubble was a memory from my past as Linda in her existence. So here is another picture where I've drawn what these bubbles look like. And inside the bubble, because it was dimensional like a sphere, in there was a little video with one of my memories. So I knew telepathically that I had to heal all of these memories as part of my life review. I was in this process for, I would suggest, another 18 to 20 months, a year and a half easily, because I processed, when I think about it, I would have processed thousands and thousands of these memories. So in my book, I talk about a few of the memories that I healed, like when I pulled the tail of my grandmother's cat, when I stood on an ant, what it's like to kill an ant, because we become the perspective of that ant. So we watch the shoe coming down upon us and we feel what it's like to be squashed. So once we learn that perspective, it's all about how we then understand each other on this planet. And we can't judge. we can't assume. And most of all, we have no negativity towards other beings on this planet at all. So then after I did my life review, I find myself in this fog stage again. And this time when I open my eyes, I'm sitting there and there's a lady way, way off in the distance. Because in this place there is no walls, there's no floors, there's no ceiling, it's all pure white. And she's only like this big over in the distance. And as she's walking towards me, she got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And she comes up to me and she's very angry. She says, "What are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here." And I'm looking at her like, oh my gosh, I've just spent all this time, because time does not exist. I've spent all this time being nice with everybody, and this lady's really being nasty to me. So it sort of took me aback a bit. And she ended up saying, "Oh, don't you know who you are and what you've still got to do? You can't be here. You've got to go back." And I said to her, "How can I go back when I don't know where I'm from? How do I go back because I don't know where I've been?" She said, "Linda, I am your great, 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 great grandmother, Karina." Then she started telling me all about her life back in the 1820s. Some of those factors I've now proven to be correct, so it's all true, what she said. Then she started telling me things about my life. She told me, because this happened in 2001, she said, "You must go back to the land from where you are from, which is Australia." She said, "You will get a job working for the police," which I laughed at, because with my health injuries, how could I ever work for the police? She said, "You'll be there for 10 years. I ended up applying for a job. I thought I was going to the city morgue because it said you must be able to deal with gruesome information. And fair enough, I found myself working with the police. And I worked with the police from 2002 till 2012. 10 years, like she said. So then she says, "You've got to go back." And I said, "How do I go back?" And she said, "All you have to do, Linda, is think about where you're from, and you will go back there. For what we think, we create." So I closed my eyes and I started to think about where I'd been. Where had I been? I thought about my bed, where I'd been sleeping. I thought about where my body was when the ambulance took me to hospital that night. And then I woke up and I found myself in hospital with nurses pulling me out of a coma in ICU. And that again is when things got really weird. So my ESP psychic abilities has increased significantly. I've always been a psychic my whole life. I've always been able to see ghosts and spirits all my life. But now I know songs before they come on the radio. Now I know things that other people don't know. So I do psychic readings, I do healings because I'm a healer. I also got upgraded a few years ago where I now see spirit guides. So I've had a lot of confirmations with people. We actually entered a significant belt of electron magnetism in our universe. It's like the Van Allen belt, but we're not always in it. We don't have it around us all the time. This belt is around us from 2012 up until about 2050, where we're going through like this radiation belt of the universe. During this time, because it's all electrons is what increases our psychic ability. But right now is a very big awakening time all over the planet. And the governments know this. All the governments of the planet, especially those of the really high puppeteers, we're talking like the Carl Schwabs and the JP Morgan banks and all these people who like the control over everybody on the planet. They know that we are about to evolve. They know that we're starting to come into ascension, which is our fifth dimensional awakenings. So they have to dumb us down. Look at now what's happening with Israel and the Gaza Strip. Every day on the news, we've got reporters on the ground filming. We've got people coming back on planes. We've got all this real footage of what's going on. And then we find out that Biden from America, he is the one funding Ukraine. And now we find out that he's going over to Israel. So who is really doing this war? We've got to ask ourselves, who is really creating this chaos? Because once we work it out and we find out who is really in charge of what's going on, then we can start to ignore them. Because as soon as we ignore someone, they lose their strength. Look at any Hollywood actress from the 1940s. They all say the day I'm no longer in the news is the day people forget about me, because there's someone else coming up in my shoes. So we must keep those people like the Carl Schwabs and the UN and the WHO, World Health Organization. They must stay in the news so people fear them. Because if they're not in the news, we just go, oh yeah, you're doing your stuff, I'm doing my stuff. And they don't. So she said, after this happens, there will be a war, because they must create a war, because they have spent so much money over the 2020 to 2023 period. Look at a country and have a look at their national debt now. Every country is in debt. And how do they make money? Go to war. Look at World War II, how much money that generated. So there has to be a global war. But there is going to be a lot of conflict coming out in the next 6 months. Okay? I can actually see North Korea coming back out of the fold. He's going to start doing some nasty things again. I can see Ukraine hasn't finished doing what it's doing. China is coming out of the fold. It's going to start making waves. America obviously is going to start making waves because they've got so much invested issues with so many countries. So, you know, again, don't listen to what the governments are doing, because they tell us what they want us to know. Do your own research. Make your own decisions on who is right and who is wrong in these. Obviously, not everyone's always right. Not everyone is always wrong. You know, I look in history, look at Adolf Hitler. We say what a horrible man he is. But then he had a wife, Eva Braun. She obviously loved something about him. So not everything with him was bad. So we've got to use discernment, and we've got to use logic when working out what is going on over the planet. But there is going to be a lot of conflict. Try not to get involved in it is the big thing. Why do you think now they've got this alien talk going on? Seriously, we've known aliens exist all through history. You know, there's tapestries from 2,000 years ago where men are pointing to the sky and there's an alien ship in the sky. You know, that's in a church in the UK where it's in a LED light picture from 2,000 years ago. So humanity has known aliens exist for centuries, eons. So why are they now bringing out this alien invasion talk and releasing it? Because they must fear us out. You think of anyone who's religious, where Jesus Christ or Buddha, Muhammad, whatever you believe in, came to earth to be a savior. And imagine that conflict of interest in our own brain, that cognitive dissonance, where we are disproven with our religious thoughts and beliefs, and we now believe that aliens exist. So they have to bring down the aliens. And believe me, most of the aliens are good ones. Thank you so much for watching me today. As I said, my name is Dr. Linda Kramer. I've given all my links in the description below. So on behalf of this channel, thank you so much for watching me today. Please support this channel with any way that you can, because they are doing an amazing job, and I'm so grateful to be wanting to be one of their guests. So thank you so much for watching. and hopefully you continue the journey that you're on.